Gus, I have a couple of things to talk about. One thing is
this an intervention?
No, it's not an intervention. It's ditch flower season, as you can tell on our table.
Which, if you're listening, Sydney is incredibly talented at putting together these flower arrangements of ditch flowers.
Ditch flowers. Now, I will say the purple, I don't know what they're called. They're from the tree outside in the courtyard in our backyard. These are flowers from our backyard. They're from a tree. And this tall grass is from our front yard here at the studio that didn't get cut. And so I liked it. So I chopped it off.
So if you're driving in rural Saline or McPherson County
and you
just see Sydney in a ditch,
it's normal. Just leave me alone. Okay. So, and I don't know, and don't ask me what any of these are, but I like them because they're yellow and they give me life. So anyway.
Have you ever had a problem where you've like gotten poison ivy or anything from this?
No.
Hobby? Okay.
But I did pick, hold on. I have a story.
Okay.
So a couple days ago, actually, we're going to talk about this rock here in a minute. On our way out to Maxwell, I was driving on Pawnee and I found these beautiful purple flowers and I started picking them and I put them in my car and my fingertips started getting a little numb. And I'm like, oh, maybe I need to start taking pictures of these and then asking my phone what they are before I picked them. But they were so pretty.
Well, you discovered a new anesthetic. Congratulations. So yeah, let's shift gears and talk about this lovely rock.
We're going to talk about this lovely rock. So it has its own table, as Merlin calls it. It is now table salt. So this is a salt rock. So we took a class trip. Is I guess what we could call it.
Just for fun. Yeah.
So we do these like team. They're kind of more like team retreats.
But without like the whole gimmick of trying to
bond.
Yeah. we just spent time together doing something fun.
Yeah. And this year, Tim, our editor, suggested we go to Maxwell because we talk about Maxwell a lot. Trish at Maxwell she
rolled out the red carpet for us.
Pretty much.
Which was awesome.
So we went out there and then we toured. We got to see the first baby bison of the year. Very, very fun.
Check out our social media to see that.
Social media, and you can go to the Curious Kansan newsletter. It's on there. Tanner and the crew took some really fun pictures. Mm-hmm. So we took everyone out there and then we put Tanner in charge of planning this whole, our producer Tanner.
And he did a great job.
Mm-hmm. So then we kind of did a staff poll of like, okay, do we want to go to Stratica? Do we want to go to Cosmosphere or the Flint Hills tour? And everyone picked Stratica. And
we'll get to the others, don't worry.
Yeah, we'll get to the others. But part of the tour, which I didn't know, and I've been there before in the last year with my kids, they take you on the train ride, the dark tour, and they let you pick a rock. So you could either...
I hope you can sense Sydney's excitement for this.
Well, I didn't get to do it on my tour. If I did, I don't remember. But you could either do like a little pouch of this rock salt, or you could get one the size of your palm. And I was like, it's going to be great in the studio? A giant rock salt. So our tour guide, Thomas, was actually very fun. He told us that we're not supposed to lick it, but he didn't care what we did once we got home.
So have you?
No, I haven't.
Okay, good.
So if you're wondering what this little device is in our studio from now on, it's going to sit in the back. It is our rock salt from Stratica.
And if you're like many of our team and me included, like I only went to Stratica for the first time last year. And this was the first time in almost 20 years that I'd been to Maxwell. Like these are places that you must go as a Kansan. You have to. They're so cool. They're just hanging out with the bison for an hour and a half out on the.
It makes you feel really powerful.
Yeah,
like
it makes special.
Yeah.
So make time. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. So anyway, we got salt.
Welcome to Ask a Kansan. Welcome to Ask a Kansan,
a podcast where we're amplifying, connecting, and uncovering stories across Kansas.
And every time we have a guest, I feel this way, but it's just hitting me again that we have the coolest people on our podcast.
And it's not like, yes, it's intentional that we want the coolest people, but sometimes we have cool people and we don't realize how cool they are.
Exactly.
And I feel like this is kind of one of those times.
Kansas cool.
Sure, with a K.
The K.
Going back to middle school, we spelled cool with K. But so, I don't know. I could
Tell
go
us
on.
about today's guest.
So today's guest is LeLan Dains. So LeLan, I'll say this again in our conversation, but I stalked him very much before our conversation today. And it was to get background information, but the more like I dug, and I was like, this guy is like so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Just all the different things he's got experience, and some of it we didn't even touch on. But
He's another full commitment Kansan.
Yes.
So we'll let him kind of talk about what he does and which organizations he's involved in. But I think you'll find it relevant.
Yes. So without any further ado, here's our conversation with LeLan. Welcome.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Bien, too.
That's
about all I got.
We're both second guessing our Spanish knowledge. Yeah.
Well, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, for our audience, can you introduce yourself for us?
Absolutely. My name is LeLan Dains, and I'm the executive director of Kansas Spanish Speakers.
But you have done a number of different things.
Yeah, a lot of hats.
So, and I don't know where to start because you're such an interesting person, and I may have stalked you probably too much in preparation for this interview. But let's start with Kansas Spanish Speakers. Can you give us kind of the overall of what that is and why you created it?
Yeah, I'll try to give the simple explanation because we do all kinds of things. First and foremost, Kansas Spanish Speakers, it's a nonprofit. We're based out of Emporia, Kansas. And essentially, we attempt to build bridges and trust, namely between Spanish-speaking community members and English-speaking. And I think that's important to make that distinction that we don't only work with Hispanic folks and Spanish speakers, even though our name is Kansas Spanish Speakers, because otherwise you wouldn't have a bridge, you just have a dock that goes out into the middle of the water and doesn't connect two things together, right? So if we're going to be a bridge, we've got to firmly work on both sides, both banks of the river there that we're crossing. And so what does that mean? What does that look like? Well, we offer all kinds of assistance with education, advocacy, resources for our Spanish speakers. That could be help getting immigration documentation like asylum or work permissions. It could be obtaining health insurance. It could be getting a driver's license. Our motto is sí cómo no, means yes, of course. And it's kind of that idea of yes is the answer. What's your question? We'll help you get there. If we don't have the information, we vow to track it down for you and help you get to the right person or place. For our English speakers, we do all kinds of things. We host language exchanges where they can practice their language with native speakers. We do Spanish classes. We'll teach you Spanish. We do custom Spanish for businesses and how to use technology to bridge the gap. We do community workshops in a variety. We've done those in a handful of communities already. So most of that focus for our English speakers is giving them the tools to basically, the way I describe it is stop saying, oh, I'm sorry, I can't speak Spanish. I can't help you, to, hey, I learned a little bit and they taught me how to use my translator. Let me try to help you. So it's really just overcoming that mentality of not knowing what to do to having the confidence and the tools to say, oh, I can communicate with you. It's the 21st century. Use that technology and let's communicate with one another.
Love it. So how did it come to be?
Yeah. Well, like most things, I had a wild idea. It started out as Emporia Spanish speakers, actually. And I wanted to become fluent myself. That was a goal I had. And I understood the dedication, the commitment that required. And I can't sugarcoat it. If you want to obtain a high level of language ability, it's a long journey. Okay. It's a lot of hard work. And so I was practicing for about 6 months. I was doing homework in my old college textbooks and my wife's old textbooks, and I could read and write, and I knew the grammar, and I thought, I'm going to go down to the Mexican restaurant. I'm going to order in Spanish. And I froze like a deer in headlights. I knew all the words. I knew exactly what to say, and I couldn't do it because I was scared. I hadn't practiced speaking. I hadn't said any of those words out loud. And right there in that moment, I think a lot of people are faced with a choice. This is hard. I'm embarrassed. I'm going to slink away, and I'm going to go do something different that's easier. I'm the kind of guy who says, that was hard. I'm embarrassed. I've got to work on this and I've got to speak. And so Emporia Spanish Speakers was just a community club where I invited others to come speak with me so I could have people to practice with. And as we got to know community members, both English speaking and Spanish speaking, it evolved and it evolved. And my kids would love something like this because we no longer have dual language programs in our school. So we started a youth program. And then the adults were like, wait, I want something like this. So we started adult programs and on until eventually we're like, what we have here is a nonprofit and it's time to. And just a year ago, I was able to leave my careers behind and do this full time, which is nothing I set out to do and more than beyond a dream come true to just be able to serve people in this capacity.
So how are you helping statewide now? Because we went from Emporia to, okay, we're going to start expanding. So how has that been over the last probably year, right? Year and a half?
About since last summer. So coming up on a year of being rebranded as Kansas Spanish speakers with the intent of serving beyond Emporia. So some of that access that I talked about can be done anywhere. Even though we're based in Emporia, we can help individuals with immigration documentation over the phone. We can help get you to the health insurance resources you need over the phone. So a lot of it is simply needing to make connections within communities to find the right people who need our services and getting them to call us and reach out because we can do a lot of that assistance remotely. And then I talked about those workshops and those custom language classes we can go into, and we've been in Colby and Hayes and Dodge and KCK, and we've been in those communities doing workshops. Sometimes it's dual language church congregations, and they say, well, we've got an English congregation, we've got a Spanish congregation, and they're not connected. They don't talk to each other. So we come in and do some bridge building work to get those people understanding how to communicate with one another and overcoming some of those fears. So those are all types of things that we can do in different communities. We can do things remotely. We can travel. Sí, cómo no. Yeah, of course. Let's do it.
Where did your interest in learning Spanish come from, or where did it start?
Yeah, well, I was first introduced, one of my aunts married a gentleman from Cuba. So I have a Cuban uncle, and he was born in Cuba, spent the first 7 years of his life there, immigrated to the U.S. through Miami, and there was actually an Emporia State University professor who was in Florida recruiting Cuban families to come to Emporia, and that's how he ended up there, met my aunt, and became a part of our family. And he didn't I wouldn't say that he gave a lot of education, but he would often speak in English and Spanish just to put it out there. So that was my first introduction. But I'd say when I was as an adult, 8 years ago, when I really doubled down and wanted to become fluent, was on the heels of doing a lot of travel. I was working for Carmichael Training Systems, and I was traveling to Costa Rica and Chile and Argentina. And so I was dabbling a little bit functionally because I was traveling for work. When I got back to Emporia, it was all quickly going away. And I said, this is something I want, and I just doubled down on it. Yeah. So a little bit of personal influence and then some travel. And it was just, I'm a learner. I want to be a student of the world, and I think everyone should strive to be learning. And I'm not talking about textbook learning. I'm talking about learn from the world. What can it teach you? So
we love curiosity.
Yeah.
So that's wonderful.
What are some like strategic partnerships that you've been able to accomplish in the last year since rebranding?
Well, we just received a wonderful one-time donation from the president of Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers Big Sisters, which was fantastic. And then the Kansas Health Foundation continues to be a significant partner of ours. So our formation was actually linked to a partnership that they created called Building Power and Equity Partnerships. And ultimately, Ed O'Malley, who I'm sure you're aware of, you've probably had on your show.
Yeah.
Okay, it's time to get Ed on here, founder of the Kansas Leadership Center, and now he's over at the Kansas Health Foundation. He is a bold thinker. And when he crossed over to the Kansas Health Foundation, as he tells it, he asked his team, are we happy with where the health of Kansas is at? The answer was a resounding no. In 1992, we were 8th in the nation. By 2022, 23, we're around 31st, 32nd. It was the largest decline of any state in the U.S. over that time period. Yay, Kansas. Love our state, but we got some work to do in that area. And so he said, well, if what we have always been doing is clearly not working, at least not for the last 30 years, what do we need to do different? It's not lost on people. The statistics are clear. Minority populations tend to have more adverse health outcomes than their English-speaking counterparts or their white counterparts, right? And so he wanted to invest $30 million across 30 organizations for 10 years it was rather unprecedented. We were one of those recipients.
Wow.
So the easy math is we received a $1 million 10-year partnership from the Kansas Health Foundation built on trust. They said, here's this money, no strings attached, serve your mission. Go help us make Kansas a healthier place. And I am beyond proud to say, and I cannot claim that it's just the Building Power and Equity Partnership because it takes all of us doing our part. But since 2022, when they started that partnership, Kansas for 3 straight years has moved up. We are now 28th. And that's
Woohoo.
modest steps, but for the first time in that period, we have seen 3 consecutive years of going in the right direction. So I think the Building Power and Equity Partnership is undeniably a part of that. And I'm very proud to be doing that work. And you know, you sit there and you think, well, wait, LeLan, how is the work that you're doing linked to health? We're not talking about exercise and diet and those types of things. Well, we do get into a little bit of healthy living, but what the Health Foundation understood and what most of us probably know is you cannot be healthy if you're not gainfully employed. Mm-hmm. You cannot be healthy if you're stressed out because you don't have the documentation you need. So it's about foundations of health. And that's kind of the area we work on, is getting the building blocks to put people in a position where health can become a little bit more of a thing they can think about going out for a hike at the park or playing and doing those things. And so we think the work that we do, and well, we talked about health insurance. Health insurance was one of the major areas where Kansas was performing poorly. And in the last few years, that has gone up. And we know for a fact that our organization has helped more than 100 individuals get on health insurance. We know our Latino community members and friends are 2 times more likely to not have health insurance than their white counterparts. And we are absolutely working to bridge that gap and helping those numbers go in the right direction. So the Kansas Health Foundation, and then now you asked in the past 12 months, we're working on another potential partnership with them to do some neighborhood revitalization, residential infill.
Cool.
Yeah, we're going to start in Emporia, and if we are correct and believe this it can work, then we want to expand that into other communities. Mm-hmm. So, bridge building, healthy living, all of it.
I have a very blunt question, and I'm not sure how to ask it, so it's going to be...
Nothing's off the table.
So, when you talk to other organizations or other people about the Kansas Spanish speakers, do they look at you and be like, why is this blue-eyed white guy talking to me about about the Kansas Spanish speakers?
Let's talk about imposter syndrome, right? That question doesn't offend me because I've asked it to myself a million times, right? Who am I to be doing this work and leading this work, to be the face of this organization? Some of it has to do with I had the talent to become bilingual, which isn't something a lot of white people in particular can say at a fluent level, at a very high level, right? And as I spoke with some of my Hispanic community members and friends there in Emporia, the first time I asked that question of a dear friend who is Latina, and I said, what am I doing? Why, I don't feel comfortable doing this. And she looked at me and she said, you are precisely who we need doing this work. And it wasn't lost on me that people need advocates, but it really forced me to reckon with the privilege that I have in my life. And ultimately what we determined is my face opens doors, as you pointed out. Blue-haired, I had blue-eyed, I had blonde hair once upon a time. I open doors with the privilege that I carry. And I think we all have to ask ourselves, if you're of the type that accepts that we have some privileges, what am I going to do with it? And it was Latinos who encouraged me to go out and open that door. And I said, okay, I will go kick that door down that's blocking your path. But by gosh, you got to be right behind me walking through that door. Because if I open doors through the privilege that I have and you're not there, we've missed the moment. And so I was challenged to swallow some of that pride and live in that discomfort. Being the founder and executive director of a nonprofit organization serving Latino folk primarily, I had to deal with all that. But I also put the challenge out to the community and said, great, okay, if we're going to do this, it's hand in hand. It's not me, it's not you, it's us together, and we're going to walk, I'll kick it down, but I'm pulling you right through. And so what does that mean? It means when a seat is open, I need you to occupy it. And one of the things I'm constantly thinking about is where is a chair that I need to sit in and what is one for you? I can come do interviews and that type of thing, but I need them to serve on the volunteer boards, get involved in the city. I need you to vote if you're capable. All those things that I need you to do your part and uphold. Yeah, it's It was uncomfortable at first. I'm far more comfortable with it now. I understand my role, and I feel good about that.
Brilliant. I don't know if we've answered this question, but how long has the
Organization.
organization been around?
Yeah. Officially, October of 2017 is when I started Emporia Spanish Speakers. We became a 501c3 nonprofit in May of 24, and we rebranded as Kansas Spanish Speakers in around July of last year.
Okay.
That's the timeline.
This episode is sponsored by Renaissance Cafe. Serving Northern Italian cuisine prepared with a fresh, contemporary influence, the Renaissance Cafe is one of Kansas's favorite restaurants. Whether you're planning a romantic dinner date, a family celebration, or an intimate meal with friends, the Renaissance provides a unique dining experience with an old-world atmosphere. Open Thursday through Saturday evenings, the Renaissance Cafe is located just south of Salina in Assyria, Kansas. Visit renaissancecafeassyria.com to book your reservation today. Did you change your mission beyond just expanding the scope from Emporia to the state? Was there any other changes that your organization needed to do to better serve the state?
A little bit. So first and foremost, when we incorporated as a 501c3, we actually incorporated as Kansas Spanish Speakers, and we continued to DBA, doing business as Emporia Spanish Speakers. So even at that time, we had the vision that we wanted to serve beyond Emporia. We didn't feel we were ready in that moment. You got to understand, in May of 2024, we had one full-time employee, and it wasn't me. And it was my community outreach coordinator, and she had just started in April. So while we had this vision to move beyond just Emporia and serve, and when we say Kansas, it's really not just Kansas, it's the region. We've done some work in Nebraska and consulting in Texas, which we can get into, but we're really available. What we understood, we needed to go beyond Emporia, and that Emporia would be a limiting name. So we did change our mission, but not so much because of the name change, but because we had already been changing our scope. Again, I started it as a language club, and we very quickly outgrew that language club. So the original mission was very much tied to language and learning language. And then we evolved into providing that access to education, advocacy, resources. And so that became our mission. So that grew, and all of that was kind of tied together, and we knew the name would need to change in order to be accepted. It's just, to come into Salina and you're called Emporia Spanish Speakers, and the question is immediately, how is that connected to me? What does that mean for me? But when you say Kansas, that name, I even believe, goes beyond. When you have a statewide kind of appeal, even your neighbors, Nebraska and others, are like, oh, I get it. You can help. It feels a little more comfortable and connected. So
I think a lot of people who don't speak Spanish, within English as a language, we notice a lot of the little differences, right? Like somebody from Australia, somebody from the UK, so on and so forth. Obviously, the Spanish diaspora is huge and multifaceted. How does that complexity show up in your work?
Oh, it's so hard. And I hope we get language nerdy, because I nerd out on language. And it was really through learning Spanish that I realized how bonkers English is. We can get into that. You take it for granted when it's just your mother tongue and you're not exposed to other languages. It just seems normal. But when you learn another language, you're like, there's nothing normal about this. But within that diaspora you were talking about, so Spanish is spoken in more than 20 countries. I think it's the most number of countries. Spanish is the highest in the number of countries that it's spoken in. It's not the most spoken language. It's about third behind Chinese, English, and then I think it's Spanish, something like that. But there's a lot of different countries, and they're all over the globe, not just in Central and South America. So right there in Emporia, how does that come into my daily work? Well, Emporia has community members and residents from Mexico predominantly, of course, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Chile, Argentina, Venezuela, Cuba, Puerto Rico. And all of those individuals speak different Spanish from one another. And some are easier for me to communicate with, and some are harder. They all have varying degrees of formal education. It has nothing to do with someone's intelligence, but it means that some people might speak more slang or street kind of Spanish, and that's really difficult to wrap my head around sometimes. But at the end of the day, it goes back to that mentality that I was preaching, to move people from, sorry, I can't help you, to we're going to get in this, and it's going to be awkward, and we're just going to figure it out, right? And so that's really my approach to it. Is I consider myself to be a high-level Spanish speaker. However, that does not mean I can communicate well with every Spanish speaker out there. Spain, for example, most people recognize it's actually called Castellano. They don't call it Spanish. It's Castellano is the language they speak, and it is very different. So you just walk into it with this attitude of, hey, how's it going? Where are you from? My name's this, my name's that. Okay. How can I help you? I might need my device, or maybe I don't, but let's just get into it. And you found your way to my door. What can I do for you? So, but yeah, I love it. Well, the thing that's really tricky though is really when it comes to slang, and I'm not talking about inappropriate slang. I'm just talking about the words that we use that aren't textbook, right? And the tricky thing is neighbors like El Salvador might use a word for comb, and then next door in Nicaragua or Honduras, it's actually something inappropriate. And you're like, wait, I just learned this word as being this, and now it's offending you.
I can see how that might be difficult to navigate at times.
Tricky.
If you have a conversation with
Tricky
multiple
stuff.
different
I mean,
cultures represented.
You can almost say the same in English, where in America, there are certain words that are definitely swear words, but like in Europe, they're like a normal everyday thing.
Well, I've got a great
Or vice
example.
versa,
So we think about
vice versa.
fanny. We have a fanny pack in the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
Fanny in the U.K. is a term used for a woman's
Rear end.
biological parts. Yeah. So we might walk around and say, if we're visiting London, we say, oh, I got my fanny pack on. And they're going to be like, what are you talking about?
What?
Your bum bag? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, so it's in every language.
Mhm.
You mentioned a second ago, sorry.
No, go.
You said that you've worked with some companies. Did
Yeah.
I catch that? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you elaborate on how that might be different
Mhm.
than working with just, regular folks like us?
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest with you, that's some of the work that I really enjoy for a couple of obvious reasons. A lot of the advocacy is handled by my employees. So we're a team of 3, myself, a community outreach coordinator, and an administrative assistant who also does some of that community outreach work as well. They're the ones, and they're both native Spanish speakers. One is from Venezuela, one is from Nicaragua. They've been in Emporia for 3 to 5 years in the U.S. And so as immigrants themselves, they can do a far better job of connecting with other immigrants on the services they need. They can communicate more efficiently and quickly. So that makes sense. My job, being the native English speaker, is to work with the businesses and the communities and all that type of stuff. And so a couple that come to mind, the Emporia Rec Center has actually been a repeat customer of ours. They brought us in to do a training for their lifeguards. They loved it so much that they then brought us in for their gym staff and other departments, interdepartmentally, right? They're like, wait, this was awesome. And if you think about lifeguards, there are a lot of teenagers, college-age kids maybe at oldest. And the director was like, a lot of these trainings are hit or miss. These kids have short attention spans. They're usually not interested. And she said, they have been talking about this for months. I see them using the Spanish you taught them at the pool. And again, we go back to what we taught them was functional Spanish in their area. So we don't some of the commands that they need to be able to communicate. We kept it easy and bite-sized so they could remember. So I always love it when someone gets it, sees it, really appreciates it, and brings us back for more. The hospitals have been a really big customer of ours, both Stormont Vale Health and the local Newman Regional Health Hospital there in Emporia. We've collaborated them with on a multitude of things. Stormont they've contracted us for survey outreach. And I always brag about this because I'm super proud. They were doing, simultaneously, they were doing a survey in English and Spanish. They're looking to build a new clinic in Emporia. And so they're wanting to get some awareness information and opinions on that. And so the marketing company they contracted knew me, was a friend of mine, and he said, can we subcontract you to do the Spanish portion of this survey? I said, absolutely. Well, at the conclusion of the window, we had so many more Spanish surveys than they had in English that they closed the Spanish survey portion and they had to keep going with the English survey. And the reason I'm really proud about that is because it proves what we have said, which is we have built trust with the Hispanic community. And most companies, and I assure you, most companies want to connect with Latinos, whether it be because of good intentions or just pure pragmatic dollars and cents. I don't care what your motivation is. But they don't know how, and they don't have the trust, I assure you. And so that's the critical bridge that we can provide to a company is to come in and say, what are you trying to communicate to these folks? You want a survey? You want marketing? We can help put your information in front of these people, and they listen to us. They trust us. If we ask them to fill out this survey, they don't ask questions. Yep, okay. Because we've built that trust with them. And how do you build trust? You get in the trenches day after day and you show up for people. And we've done that. And so it's a really powerful thing that we can bring to these companies. And so other examples like that, we've worked with city governments. In fact, we helped the city of Emporia become the first certified welcoming community in the state of Kansas. And I think Dodge City has since followed, and KCK. But we were the first right there in Emporia.
What does that mean? Yeah, can you define that
so
for us?
Welcoming America is an international nonprofit. They have a welcoming standard that communities can follow, and you can actually get certified, basically a community audit, to verify that you are providing these welcoming services in your community. And it has to be run through a municipality, but a nonprofit or other community partners, such as us, can help that municipality, that city government, navigate that and do a lot of. So we basically ran the program, but the designation always goes through a city or county. It was the city of Emporia that got the designation, and rightfully so, because it's a community effort to make that happen. A big believer in Welcoming America, and that's something we can help consult communities with. If you're interested in providing a more welcoming front, we can come in and help navigate that standard and what it takes to become a truly welcoming city. Yeah. One of the many suite of services that we can offer.
So that organization, you mentioned it's international. So is that geared specifically for Spanish speakers, or is that geared for all language or all groups? Like, how does that work?
Welcome America tries to create welcoming communities for all. And in fact, they have a very strong emphasis on refugees as much as immigrants. And there are many refugees, of course, from the Middle East. We certainly had and probably continue to have many Ukrainian refugees and that kind of thing. So they are absolutely trying to create welcoming communities for all immigrants and refugees, regardless of language, country of origin, or anything like that. Now, in Emporia, and because we were involved, of course, there's a heavy focus on Spanish, because that is the overwhelming majority of who immigrants coming into our community are. But when we talk about creating a welcoming community, it's not really about language at that point. There are some questions like, are ESL programs available, English as a second language? Again, available to anyone, regardless of their native tongue. Are there, does the Chamber of Commerce support we'll just call them non-English speaking, everyone else that doesn't speak English. So it really just looks at all these touch points and say, are you creating a welcoming space, and do you have the ability to service non-English speakers?
I grew up with a mom who owned an insurance agency, and I worked there for a summer, I think in college, which was a very eye-opening experience for me. If I never want to be an insurance agent ever in my life. People only come to you with bad news, and
they want money.
And they want money. But one of the things that really opened my eyes was how many children become translators for their parents.
Yeah.
How have you encountered that, and how have you helped kind of break that barrier between, I trust my kids to translate for me, but I don't need them helping me get a loan for the house when they're 5. Well, I really appreciate that you intuitively understand, or whether you learn to understand, that that's not appropriate. Mm-hmm.
And that is one of the examples I say a lot when I'm trying to explain why our services are needed. So you're talking about insurance, which if we're honest with ourselves, insurance, probably health insurance more than auto or house or those types of things, but it's a language all of its own.
Yeah.
Right. And when we think about these specific arenas in our native language, some of the jargon is so technical that it's confusing to us as native English speakers. I'm lost when someone's telling me about, and it's just so much legal terminology or technical terminology that it kind of tunes you out. So my point is that that's complicated amongst 2 native English speakers trying to have that conversation about health insurance or car insurance, what have you. Then you bring in a non-English speaker who is using their child as a translator. Come on. Do you think that information is getting conveyed the way that it needs to be, and correctly and accurately? I think more times than not, you get to the end result, but I think it's very messy and with a lot of misunderstandings, and it leads to complications down the road because things weren't clear and understood from the onset. So we absolutely believe it is very inappropriate by all parties, to both the parents who often rely on those kids and the individuals who might be needing that translator and willing to accept the child as an intermediary. It becomes even more inappropriate in a hospital setting, of course. Obviously, there's HIPAA issues. And I mean, imagine your parents getting a cancer diagnosis and you're 12 years old and you're being asked to translate that from a doctor to your parent. Not just the understanding of how to translate it, but the emotions you're feeling. I mean, it's just a really difficult proposition for a child. So we absolutely try to push our services and other solutions to move away from that mentality. Now, sometimes the parents rely on that because of that trust. I think you mentioned that. They trust their child. They might not trust someone else. And that's, again, something that we just need time to overcome, and everyone working together to say, okay, I understand, but we can't rely on Junior here. We need to try to use the tools we have to communicate this. I'm glad you get it. I hope others start to understand that, oh, that's not a really appropriate avenue for having this conversation.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
It's very, I mean, you see it a lot more if you like go to the grocery store or go to Walmart to get something. But when you think of those day-to-day things, even enrolling your child in school, you're trying to enroll that child who speaks both Spanish and English, and trying to convey what the school is telling your kid to the parent, when really it needs to be parent to kid, or parent to school. I mean, like it's hard to be a parent when your kid has all the answers. You know what I mean?
Imagine you're going to the principal's office because your kid was in trouble, and now your kid is responsible for translating their own situation.
There's all kinds of situations, and it's not like it's any fault of anyone's. It's just it's how, you know, before programs like the Kansas Spanish speaker, like before programs like that, nothing existed. Yeah. And so it's just solutions. How people have gotten on for so long. And so that's one of the things that I've always been curious about ever since kind of understanding that.
Celebrate 50 years of the arts at this year's Smoky Hill River Festival in Salina, Kansas. Enjoy inspiring art, delicious food, and great music for all ages. Step into extraordinary June 11th through the 14th.
You know, there's a group of people in the United States that say, well, why don't they just learn English? You know, and I'm not saying this is my opinion, but you know, they're sort of saying like, well, it'd just be easier if we were homogeneous and we all, you know, were the same. Yeah. And I think, you know, it's clear that, you know, the very essence of your organization is running counter to that. Yeah. Would you mind sharing, maybe not if you're comfortable talking about from your 100%. Organizational standpoint or from your personal standpoint?
We can get all the nitty gritty stuff. Like I said, nothing's off limits. Well, here's my hot take. I agree with them. When someone says they should learn to speak English, I agree. I don't agree that we should be homogenous and leave it at that. I believe they should learn English for a variety of reasons, the same reason why I wanted to learn Spanish. I want them to be curious. I want them to grow and expand their horizons. And the fact is they have landed in the United States for whatever their reasons, and it would be very advantageous for them to learn English. So yes, I'm a strong advocate of all non-English speakers learning English to varying degrees, functional, right? To be functional in their interactions. I also say to that person, you could also learn a little Spanish. And you can bridge the gap even quicker, and you can get there even faster. And obviously, I am not a believer that this country should be an English-speaking only country. But my perspective is that we should all strive to learn a multitude of languages. It just enriches your life. You know, I probably started this with the mindset of I'm going to help others. I think like most people that when you start a nonprofit, I'm going to serve others. I'm going to serve my community. I'm going to help out. And I think I have these abilities and privileges and opportunities to do so. What I didn't realize is, actually, they're helping me grow. They are teaching me as much, if not more, as I'm teaching them. I might teach them systems, education, advocacy resources, those types of things, how to navigate health insurance or this, that, or the other. We might teach them that. They're teaching me how to live. They're teaching me how to love. They're teaching me how to celebrate. the Latino culture I am enamored with for a variety of reasons. And so it has enriched my life in ways that I couldn't have imagined. And I'm someone who's traveled to Latin America. And even still, when I got into this work, I just was not expecting the way that my life would be transformed. I've had many Latino community members tell me I'm an adopted Latino. So, and that makes me feel very proud, of course, but it makes me feel just like the effort has been worth it, that I have made this effort to learn something new. And in all honesty, it just creates more curiosity. I've dabbled a little bit in German, but I need to kind of, for me.
I took 2 years of it and still failed. So.
I need a practical use, and I struggle. We don't have German speakers in our community, certainly not very many. And so it's just been hard to get into it. But all of that just makes you want to learn more. I want, oh, well, this is how they do it. And how do they do it over here? And what's this like? And
So at the top, Sydney referenced that you have a lot of areas of involvement. So
yeah,
I do want to get into that. Well, mainly because you've had this amazing life, and you're still very young, and so I just want to kind of, I don't know. I don't even know where to start. Again, I stalked you for far too long today.
Yes. Got a stalker.
I guess one thing, like, where did you grow up?
Yeah.
And what were kind of your interests, high school, college? We'll just tee that up.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because it really allows me to make a point that I think is really important for our Kansas listeners. I'm a Kansan, of course. I'm a Lyon County native. I was born in Emporia, but I grew up in Neosho Rapids, Hartford. These are towns of 300, 500. I had 20 kids in my graduating class, right? And like most rural Kansans, the message was very clear. And it wasn't a mean message, but the message was, get far, far away from here. There are no opportunities for you here. There's no life for you to build here, right? And of course, when you're 18 and graduating high school, and I did attend Emporia State University, so let's say once I graduated college, I was ready to go. I got a degree in recreation management. I was going to be a skydive instructor and a whitewater raft guide, and I was doing jumps and that kind of stuff, adventure outdoor stuff. And that was a lot of fun, but I got my first real job with the Department of Defense down in Memphis, doing morale, welfare, and recreation for the spouses and children of those people being deployed and those that were on bases. And so I would take the kids hang gliding and doing activities and all sorts of fun stuff.
I just want to pause right there. Department of Defense.
Yep.
Hanging out with the kids.
Yeah.
Like, it's not something. How do you find a job like that?
Well, recreation, baby. I think, this is my recreation plug. People view it, I think it probably still has this connotation of not a viable career path. I assure you, it is one of the most robust career paths anyone could take. It's the second largest industry worldwide when you talk about recreation and tourism. Mm-hmm. It's massive globally. You could work anywhere doing almost anything, from hospitality to hang gliding with kids with military brats. And so I really enjoyed that. I came back to Emporia. Then I went up to upstate New York and worked for Frost Valley YMCA, the largest YMCA on the East Coast, an hour north of New York City in the Catskills. Loved every bit of that. Moved to Colorado Springs, worked for Carmichael Training Systems. Chris Carmichael was Lance Armstrong's coach. And even non-cyclists usually know who Lance Armstrong is.
Yeah.
So, and I even lined up, post-retirement, I lined up with Lance at a couple of mountain bike races and that kind of stuff. And of course, I was an avid cyclist, so that's what landed me with that job. And I had a friend out there. That was the job that allowed me to travel and those types of things. And it was a ton of fun. But not to get in the weeds of Lance, of course, came out and admitted to his drug use. And more than that, he just wasn't a real kind guy to a lot of people. And so I didn't want to be in that circle of people. I was already thinking about understanding that my reputation was linked to those who I surrounded myself with. And I wanted out of there. So that's when a really significant change happened in my life. I'd been missing Kansas. I wanted to come home. I was getting old enough, approaching 30, probably upper 20s at that point, and thinking about family and those types of things. And I knew Kansas is where I wanted those things, but that question was there of, well, what am I going to do? And a friend of mine had started this bike race called Dirty Kansa. Jim is his name. And I was going to start my own business doing bike trips, and I was just going to base it out of Emporia. And I was going to do training camps and all this stuff and take people to all these races and support them. And my friend said, actually, we would love it if you joined us at this bike race. I think we could turn it into something. We could use your talents over here. And so I became an owner of Dirty Kansas, it was called then. And fast forward to today, it has been rebranded to UnBound Gravel, but it is the world's largest, it's the world's premier gravel cycling event. More than 5,000 riders come from over 40 foreign countries in every U.S. state. And it's extraordinary. And what that has taught me, the whole point of that lesson that I want to impart on our Kansas, especially our rural kids, because I think they hear this more than others, is when people are telling you, you need to get out of this town because it's a blank canvas and it's really boring. That's no art. It's just a blank canvas. I need you to reframe and say, look at this blank canvas. I have the opportunity to paint whatever I want on it. And that was a switch in me that I understood, whoa, there is so much power and potential in rural Kansas communities. In fact, there is endless opportunities. And so, yeah, it's kind of a glass half empty, glass half full. How are you going to look at it? But I choose to look, when others say there are no opportunities, I immediately say, there is nothing but opportunity. That's exactly what you have in abundance, is opportunity, precisely because what you want doesn't exist. You can either sit back and wait for someone else to do it, or you can get your hands dirty and get going on it.
When we started this podcast, we sort of felt that way, that like there wasn't somebody making kind of this argument that like Kansas is important. And what we discovered was that we are far from the first people.
We are far
making
from
that
it.
And so like, but when you show up to paint, using your analogy, like you start discovering all the colors that are already on the canvas, and that it's more nuanced than you thought it was.
Yeah.
And I think I was certainly guilty of that coming out of high school here in Salina.
I think we all were.
Yeah, that it's just it's there's more here than you realize as a kid, and sometimes it just takes time.
I don't discount. I'm glad that I left. In fact, I will encourage my children to go see something else, because I also value diverse experiences. And back to our analogy about painting, if you grow up in one community, you can paint a picture. You'll paint one picture probably, the same picture that everyone knows and understands already. But when you travel around, whether permanently, semi-permanently, whatever, you're going to learn other pictures and other brushes to use and colors to use. And you're going to bring that back, and you're going to make that portrait a lot more beautiful. So I'm a big fan of getting out there and seeing the world, whatever that means for you, whatever that looks like. And I'm a huge fan of coming back if that's what you want, and taking what you've learned and adding it to your community.
I take it there's a bike race. How long is the bike race? Where does it go?
So it started as a 200-mile loop on gravel roads in the Flint Hills, if you're familiar. Yeah, wow. So it was a 200-mile race. Today, we have a 25-mile distance, a 50, 100, 200, and even a 350-mile race. And the 350 has a 36-hour time limit, so 10 miles per hour basically is the
My fanny hurts
average.
just thinking about that.
Yes. Yeah, your fanny pack would not be happy with 350 miles. I have not done 350. I've done 200. I've not done 350 miles.
Goodness.
How many people are racing 350 miles?
200-300.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And today, the whole thing, the system is now a lottery. So we actually crashed the internet back in 2017, 2018. The platforms we were using for online registration could not handle the load of people trying to simultaneously register because they knew it was selling out fast the previous year. They broke it. We had to move to a lottery system. So that means you had all the time in the world, well within the window, to register your name and number in the hopes that your name got selected and you could pay to come do this event.
Wild.
So, and it's around 5,000 now, and I would venture to say that's probably the carrying capacity just based on logistics. Mm-hmm. If you think about it, Emporia is 24,000. We're about half of what Salina is. But when you go to Madison, Kansas, or Council Grove, these are towns of 500, 1,000 people, and we're talking about 5,000 riders. That math don't compute,
than the town.
Right? And they're allowed to have their friends and family meet them at these checkpoint towns. So we're talking about thousands of cars in a town of 500 people. Take some big fields, big pastures to accommodate such a thing. So it's not for lack of demand, but they're probably around what their capacity is. And that's why it's a lottery system to even try to get into it.
Can you share, like, people are coming from other countries to come here. What do they tell you after the event or during the event?
Yeah, it's one of the most rewarding things ever. And not just from people from outside the country, but early on when we started getting out of staters, they would tell us, your town is extraordinary. The Flint Hills are a marvel. This place is a gem. And for when you've grown up in it and you've been told there's nothing special or spectacular about where you live, to have an outsider come in and validate what you were starting to believe yourself, it feels so humbling. And validating is that word where you're like, yes, I knew this place was special. I'm glad someone else sees it, because it should be enough for us to think where we live is special, but I'm the kind of guy who wants to share it with the world. And I want my community to grow. We have had people, we have West Coast and East Coast Bob, 2 Bobs, one from California, one from New Jersey. They've both relocated to Emporia because of this event. Whoa. Now that's what you want in your community.
All
right?
the Bobs.
All the Bobs, West Coast Bob and East Coast Bob. And they bring their coast money and they land in our community and they buy a house and they reside there, and it's wonderful. And so, yeah, I want to share it. Yeah, I want validation from others to come in and say, gosh, what you have here is really special. And when I came to do this, and when I told my friend, yeah, okay, I want to be a part of this, but I have expectations and they're high. This event will be the world's premiere of its kind. The Flint Hills will be recognized as a top 10 cycling destination in the world. And we're going to bring youth cycling to the state of Kansas. Check, 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 and beyond. So UnBound is undisputedly the world's premier gravel cycling event. It changed for you non-cyclists out there.
Yeah.
You've got to try to wrap your head around, well, what does this mean? Manufacturers now make gravel bikes. This didn't exist 15 years ago. There was no such thing as a gravel bike. You either had cyclocross bikes to ride on these roads or mountain bikes, and Frankenstein in between. People were trying to come up with stuff. So it spurred the creation of bikes. There's now an American manufacturer who named one of their wheels Emporia. Emporia is on the name of a product sold globally. The Tour de France, which most of you recognize and have heard of, has a gravel stage. In their 20 days of racing across France, they now incorporate gravel roads into their course. It literally changed cycling the world over.
Huh. What makes gravel so much more interesting than your regular like road versus bike versus mountain?
Yeah.
Again, I'm don't get on bikes.
That's
so I'm just
okay.
curious.
That's okay. We'll fix that. We'll work on that. There's a couple of key factors, right? And there's always a little bit of right place, right time, right? We weren't the first gravel event. There was an event called the Flint Hills Death Ride, and that started in the late 80s and 90s, and they called it a mountain bike ride. So sometimes you've always got pioneers who are even too early, too ahead of their time. They're doing something that they don't even fully understand that it's something revolutionary and different. Well, so why are people doing this, and why has it exploded into what it is? You've not ridden your bike out on a road, but it's probably not lost on you that it is insanely and increasingly dangerous environment to go ride on these shoulderless roads with distracted drivers. Sorry, folks, but you can be all angry that you want that these bikes are out there, but you are a hazard to yourself and to everyone else. And I'm well aware that Salina itself has had at least one high-profile car-bike collision that resulted in a death. And so there's a lot of danger of being out on the road. Okay, the alternative is mountain bike trails. There's some right here in Salina. There's some out in this area. Mountain bike trails, single track, is extremely technical and extremely difficult, and not for your average everyday person to just say, you're like, man, I'm not into that. There's roots, there's rocks, there's drops, there's all kinds of things that want to knock you off your bike. And it's hard and it's demanding. Gravel literally marries the convenience of road cycling with the adventure of mountain biking and does it in an accessible and safe way. Now, there's tractors out there, there's semis on occasion, there's things happening, but it is a fraction of the occurrences that you would experience on road, and all of the ease and accessibility that you don't get from single track. And so all of these things combine where people are like, wait, I can go have an adventure and I can see really cool things, and I don't have a car driving 75 miles an hour buzzing me on my left shoulder. And that was really a lot of it. The
ingredient of it too is that Kansas, despite being, don't quote me here, like the 10th or 12th largest geography, state, has the 3rd longest road network.
Oh.
Yeah, which is insane.
Yes.
And so many of those roads
we have
are
98,000 miles of gravel roads. Yeah, we have got a lot of roads in this state. I forgot a really key component, and what those people were saying that you talked about, those out-of-staters and out-of-country folks, foreigners that were coming, it's the community, it's the people. We heard time and time again, I want to come back to Emporia because I feel like a rock star. The checkout gal at Walmart knew the person that won the previous year. And when he came the next year and he's checking out in Walmart, you're Yuri Oswald, you won the race last year. Sweet little cashier at the Walmart. The coffee shops, the bookstores, everyone in between. And let's face it, we know when you're not from our town, right?
Oh, yeah.
We know instantly, especially when you're from California. We know exactly you are not from Kansas, my friend. And in Emporia, we loved it. They loved it. They said, oh, I can't believe you're here. Thanks for coming to my community. And they're like, whoa, good luck on your race. And these riders, who the vast majority of them in the early years especially, were not professional athletes. They're amateur weekend warriors. And they never got that. I mean, I've had cans of Coke thrown at my head when I was out riding my bike.
Oh.
Okay, so to go from this environment where you're hated and you know it by car culture and people who don't want you on their roads, to then arrive into a town where you are celebrated because you're there to ride 200 miles of Flint Hills gravel roads, it's like, what just happened here? I want more of this. I'll come back next year.
Where can we learn more about everything?
Yeah, pretty easy. Fortunately, what we create is pretty unique. So you can do a simple Google search if you don't want to remember the website, but you can Google Kansas Spanish Speakers, or the website is simply ksSpanishSpeakers.com. The reason we couldn't spell out Kansas Spanish Speakers is because then it puts ASS right there in the... So
fair.
it's KS Spanish Speakers, or just Google Kansas Spanish Speakers. .org. I might have said .com. .org for sure. For UnBound Gravel, again, just a simple Google search will give you more content than you can sift through in a weekend. I mean, there are series on YouTube. It is live streamed. It's professionally produced. It is wild. I encourage you to watch it. I highly encourage you, whether you're into bikes or not, to find yourself in Emporia and experience something that you will not get anywhere else. It's just to be there as a spectator and to take it all in. I talked about the 5,000 riders. It brings 12,000 plus people in total to a town of 24,000. So just Google UnBound and find out when the dates are. It's always the first weekend after Memorial Day.
Oh, it's coming up.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but it starts with a Hall of Fame banquet, which I get to have the distinction of being a gravel cycling Hall of Famer. And from Wednesday to Sunday, there's something going on related to bikes and hanging out. So
That's wild.
Like so many of our guests, you are full commitment in the things that you do.
Yeah.
So thank you for being that way and contributing to the tapestry of Kansas. And thanks for being on Ask a Kansan today.
my
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thanks for having me.
Kansas Wesleyan is proud to be the educational crossroads of North Central Kansas. As a partner of Ask a Kansan, we share the desire to build our communities and to discover what makes our region special. Learn more about the power of and at kwu.edu. Well, we hope you enjoyed that interview with LeLan. I have to admit that I like gravel bicycling was not on my radar. and yeah, I definitely, I just wasn't aware of all the good work that's being done for Kansas Spanish speakers. That was awesome.
Yeah. Again, it's just one of those things you dig and dig and dig. LeLan has been on a couple different podcasts. We'll link those. He goes into more of the gravel cycling kind of community. It's a thing.
Wow.
Like, I'm not a huge bike rider myself, but like I might for that.
Like I've heard of Bike Across Kansas, which seems like is probably a smaller thing compared to this,
Yeah.
at least in terms of number of participants. But it is really neat to know that Kansas is sort of, like an important place in the world of bicycling, which is, yeah.
And I don't even think we talked about how I should really remember these things, but I don't. But he helped establish a gravel path between Kansas and New Mexico.
Really?
Yeah, like it has a specific name. Again,
Well-
there's so many different things that we didn't talk about that we probably could have had a whole nother episode just on gravel Kansas. But
So one thing we did want to point you to is when we always take guests on a tour. So if you ever come on, you get to see more behind the scenes of what we're all about here. But he was telling us about a video that they had produced.
oh yeah,
And so we'd like to just put that hopefully in the show notes so you can check it out. But it's sort of an introduction to, I would say, the why behind Kansas Spanish speakers and what they do. And I found it really moving. And I think you will too.
yeah. We were just watching it in the studio on his phone, and I was tearing up. So
Me too. It was great.
it's really powerful.
So I have plan something for you.
Oh no.
This is probably the least prepared thing I've ever done for a segment.
Oh, I love it even more then.
So I'm gonna move.
Oh, we're moving ditch flowers.
Our ditch flowers.
Okay. Why does Julie have a box?
Could you bring me my box, please?
Everyone, Julie,
Thank you very much.
everyone.
Yeah, this is my mystery
Please
box.
tell me it's like a weird rabbit in there or something.
It's pretty weird that you would say that. Okay, so we're gonna play a game.
Oh no.
If any of our viewers have the pleasure of knowing my mother, they will know that my mother is a very
She's a lover of knickknacks.
Yes, she loves knickknacks, and therefore we all accumulate knickknacks. And
I mean, look at us. We love knickknacks.
yeah, we do. I've picked it
We're
up.
knickknacky.
We have all picked it up. So the game is, can you figure out which of the two items I put on the table, and I've got several,
Okay.
was given to me by my mother, and which of them was not? Okay.
Oh, okay.
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 So there's like
Given.
I gotta
okay.
think about it for a
Some
second.
were given and some were not given. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have to distinguish between gifted knickknacks versus knickknacks you just accumulated.
That is correct.
Okay.
First of all, we have an antique. This is a light meter for
Mhm.
photography. Okay. And second, we have a solar-powered Einstein.
Okay.
Okay. Which item? do you think-
Einstein is gifted by your mother only because I know that.
How do you? Okay. Well, very impressive.
It's been in your office forever. And
That's
you
true.
said that your mom got it for you at the Cosmosphere.
well done.
no?
Well done.
Yeah?
So you've got one. Good job.
Okay, I got one. Only because I cheated because I know Gus.
Full disclosure, on my desk, this has a little thing taped at the bottom that says think. That way I don't forget to think.
Think.
Okay, round 2.
Okay. I love this so much. We should do this more often. I'm afraid. I'm going to move cups here.
Okay. All right.
Okay. For those listening, this is a canoe on a string that has beads coming from the bottom of it and what look like shells of some kind. It's kind of like a little wind chime, a canoe chime, if you will. Oh, and a whittled. No,
It's not whittled.
it's not whittled.
I can't say anymore.
Am I allowed
It's
to
like
touch
a horse.
things?
Yeah, you can touch it.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, it's like ceramic almost. Okay. A ceramic weird horse thing. Okay. What was gift? Okay. I'm going to go horse was a mother gift.
Okay, good guess. So that's a terracotta horse from China that my friend Max gave me.
Okay.
The other thing is what my mom gave me from when they were in Tanzania
Yeah. It's very,
not that long ago. So,
very
yeah.
Tanzanian.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I really don't know what to do with because my wife definitely isn't gonna just want this around the house. So,
it definitely does not fit the
not
vibe
that
she has
we're not
created.
into it, but it's cool. We just haven't figured out exactly. where
Yeah.
it's going. Probably
I
go to my
think
office.
you just need in your house, you need a culture room where it's just like different squares of different walls or all the cool things that you have accumulated or been in pictures of different places you've been. And we'll just call it the culture room.
Okay.
And it will double as your Lego room.
Okay. I'm on board. Okay.
Hannah, this is my plea. Take all the weird stuff to your house.
Okay. So this
Is that a chess piece?
you're gonna love how nerdy this is. This is the approximate size. She just made a funny face. Of if the Earth was reduced to in a black hole,
Oh.
this is how big the
course.
singularity would have to be to contain that amount of mass. Okay. So there's that. Let's see. What shall we do? We'll do this.
Oh. Is that hair?
I believe so. Yes.
Do we know where the hair came from?
Well, you could say that it is a hair.
It is a hair.
Hair made out of hair. I don't recall where it's from, to be honest with you.
Okay.
But you can guess where that's from. The other one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go Cosmosphere on that one, and I'm gonna go with your mom gave you the hair bunny.
Yeah, you guessed right. Yep.
Yeah.
This is another one of those things that I'm not exactly sure I'm going to do with it, but I'm kind of excited by it. Yeah, it feels like it's sort of deteriorating, even though I think it's new.
I want to touch
Yeah,
it
please
now.
do. It's an experience.
So, I mean, it does feel like hair, but it also feels a little synthetic.
So I have to brag on my mom here for a second. People tend to know my dad more than my mom. My mom had a store in downtown Salina for a few years called Window on the World. And it wasn't necessarily fair trade. That wasn't a big thing back then. But she did like bring in stuff from all over the world and sell it there. And so a lot of the things she gives me came from Window on the World.
The stuff that wouldn't sell? Sorry, that was intrusive thoughts coming out. There are, but these are like the weird knick-knacky things that I would love. I mean, we could do a whole tour of my office of the weird knick-knacky things I have. I have like Victorian era children's gloves on my walls, so I guess I can't say anything.
Okay, we're to the last part of this little endeavor. Okay, first we have Pinocchio bass player.
Oh.
Okay. I do play the double bass. And we have
another hair with some crazy eyes. I'm going to go mom again with the bunny.
Yeah, you're right. No, you just have to take a closer look at it because it's so... I mean, this thing, if you're listening, it's like...
It's been through something.
Yeah, it looks like a dead animal that...
I'm assuming the black hair doesn't belong
dragged
on
in.
there.
It's holding... The only thing that makes it slightly tolerable is the carrot that it's holding.
But honestly, it kind of looks like... Never mind. Made in Japan. That's a little sticker on the bottom.
I'm sure when it was made in Japan, it looked great, but no more. It has its own. Yeah.
It has its own aura.
Yeah. I feel like
if you stick a pin in it, a rabbit may die.
Yes. Voodoo bunny.
It is voodoo
bunny rabbit.
It is voodoo bunny rabbit.
We were talking about scary dolls on eBay the other day. And this is like one of those things. If I put this on eBay, I think it could fetch some serious money.
Oh, yeah. Just because of the sheer weirdness of it.
That's all I've got.
I love it so much.
Strangeness.
Now I gotta think of
Mom. Mom has been a good friend of the podcast lately.
Oh, yeah.
She's been recommending and just straight up just sending episodes to friends and family. And they've been watching. So if you're any of those people, thanks for tuning in.
Shout out to Mama Applequist. Well, that brings us to another wrap of Ask a Kansan. So as always, visit us on askakansan.com, follow us on social media, leave us a review, visit our merch store, the Ask a Kansan store on our website, sign up for our newsletter, and all the other things that we always say on every episode.